Your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
Well, sometimes that is better.
It's alive! Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hey, good evening, horror fans. Welcome to another edition of the Weekly Horoscope. I'm your host, Jerry, here with my partner, Matt. And Matt, this week our category is an interesting one. Won't Stay Dead. And when I think of this category, there's a lot of directions in horror that you could go. The first things that jump to mind are movies like Reanimator or maybe Pet Semetary, or any one of the George Romero films would certainly fit this. But I think we went in a couple interesting directions on the films we have for tonight. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I love the Won't Stay Dead idea because it's fun because it creates this, you can create a creature feature or monster that just delivers constant tension. And it also allows for setups for sequels or for franchises to like kind of be rejuvenated or reinvented.
Yeah, it's a horrifying concept to be confronted with something that no matter what you do just keeps coming. It's it really takes the monster, the creature, and almost elevates it, because almost all creatures have, an easy, or at least an avenue to end them.
Right.
And,
you kind of think of a story in three acts, right? And there's this kind of climax and then it kind of comes to an end. But with the Won't Stay Dead, it kind of creates that tension where there's not going to be, it's never going to end, right? Like there's going to create that constant tension.
Absolutely. Yeah, interesting category. Our first film in this category was your selection, and it kind of surprised me, and I love how well it fits, and is kind of a twist on the idea, but it's actually perfect. And that's Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, from 1986, directed by Tom McLaughlin. And this is a movie I had seen way back then, and I've seen a few times since, and it was interesting to revisit. It's got some highlights, and it's got some parts that are very weak, but it's an interesting movie nonetheless.
Yeah, it's an intentional self-aware horror comedy, but I think it's the best in the series, one of the best in the series, just because it's so self-aware. It's fast-paced. I think it creates a consistent atmosphere. All the kills are fun, for the most part, and I think it kind of does everything a Jason movie should do. It doesn't take itself that serious. Like even in the beginning, like Jason has this 007 beginning where he kind of like stops and looks at the camera through his eye, and then kind of like splashes his machete. Like it's just silly from the beginning.
Yeah, and I actually I agree that to me the opening sequence is one of the best in the Jason franchises, and it's
Yeah,
it's pretty iconic.
yeah,
Um, it to me it never really fully embraces the comedic parts and the horror parts. It kind of muddles in the middle a little bit. Like
yeah.
there's a scene where Jason smashes somebody's face on a tree, and there was like
A
bark missing
smiley
on that
face.
spot, and a red smiley face is there, and it's like, okay, that's. And then other scenes it tries to go pure horror, and I feel like it kind of floats in the middle for much of the movie. It's got some highlights, but a lot of it misses for me.
Yeah, there's definitely some misses. I don't think this is like one of the greatest horror movies where it's like every Halloween you have to sit down and watch, but it's kind of it's easily consumable. I think movies later on will do the horror comedy a lot better, but I think overall for the entire franchise it did well.
Yeah, you look at the era that this was released. It's released in 1986. In that year, you have Evil Dead 2, which which is maybe the pinnacle of slapstick horror. 1985, you have Reanimator, which was kind of a tongue-in-cheek. So it's right in the era where that was kind of the way to go, was to be outrageously horrific and funny at the same time, or at least fun. And I think it
Yeah.
tried to be in that vein.
Yeah, it never really bends to either or. Like Reanimator is I think more gory, right? But no, but it's funny. So like it kind of it yeah, like it kind of like goes like kind of in the middle and never kind of commits to either side fully.
We start with a grown Tommy Jarvis. He wants to destroy Jason's dead body to make sure he is gone for good. And upon rewatching this, I thought about this whole thing. The premise of this movie: Jason died at the end of four, which is to me is the best of the series. Is my absolute favorite. Then five, they do copycat killings, So, that's kind of people are a little disappointed in that. But this movie, Tommy Jarvis is portrayed as the hero as he was in 4, but everything was fine until Tommy Jarvis wandered off to the cemetery and stuck his nose in again.
Right. That's right. So he's kind of the cause of all the problems.
Yeah,
If he had just stayed away, none of this would have happened.
his
So
own
he's freaking
obsessive,
out.
yes, his own obsessive desire causes all of this mayhem, which
Right.
I guess is a little humorous twist in itself.
Yeah, it's like if he goes and knocks a tree down, it falls in the street, and he's running and telling everyone there's a tree that fell down. It's like, well, you're the one who did it.
Yeah. He brings a friend and they dig up Jason's grave on a stormy night and they find inside a dusty, rotten, completely worm-ridden, mummified. It looks like
Maggot
if you
covered.
poked it, it would just fall apart, Jason.
Yeah.
And he takes a metal pole off off the fence and he starts stabbing the worm-ridden carcass repeatedly and saying, "You're finally gone, you're finally gone." And he throws the hockey mask in, which is pretty symbolic and foolish, really.
Right.
And he leaves with the pole sticking out of, the freshly mangled carcass that he had been stabbing.
Yeah.
And the pole gets hit by lightning.
Yeah, I can't believe he didn't see that coming.
And Jason's once dusty, worm-ridden, nothing there eyes suddenly pop open with fresh life.
Yeah, very much like Frankenstein.
Yes, and I think that scene is fantastic. It's moody. It's got some gross effects. It kind of shows Tommy's obsessive psychosis over him, and then the transformation from the mummified nothing into the killing machine Jason, now an undead version of the killing machine Jason. I think that scene is great.
Yeah, it reminded me of Frankenstein. He's this like mad scientist. He's obsessed. He kind of goes in there and I mean, he doesn't do it on purpose, right? But like he kind of goes in there with his obsession and the lightning kind of comes in and charges him with new life. And now we've got this monster.
That's a category we've talked about before, how obsession can lead to horrible things,
Right.
even if they're well intentioned.
Even if it's well intentioned. Yeah.
Yeah. Jason climbs from his grave and he rips the poor friend's heart out, who was just along for the ride and really didn't want to be there. He puts the hockey mask back on and Jason's back. Again, now undead and deadlier than ever.
Yeah. Great opening.
Tommy runs away, drives off to the police station where he starts throwing a fit and he grabs one of the shotguns and they end up locking him up. He's unhinged.
I mean, he should have immediately like been under arrest for trying to do that, but they're just kind of like, like first blood. We're gonna get you out of town.
Right. It was exactly, yeah. And they didn't really believe him at first either. They're like, yeah, he's like, Jason's back. They're like, yeah, okay, buddy.
Yeah.
And if you go back in the storyline of the films, they've seen a copycat killer before.
Yeah.
So they have no reason to believe anything he's saying. We, the
Which, I mean,
moviegoer, know better, but
which is credit to the movie for trying to stick with that, considering all these movies are different directors. It's a credit to them.
Jason uses the pole that was sticking out of him, and he kills a couple in a Volkswagen Bug. And they were headed to Camp Crystal Lake, which has been renamed, and they're trying to pretend it's something different now to get rid of the awful history.
Yeah, and you see more of the self-aware humor where the lady's kind of like, I've seen enough horror movies where unmasked guys aren't friendly, so they're kind of like being self-aware.
Yeah. A group of counselors and kids arrive at the camp, and we see Jason making his way through the woods. Basically, woods must be between where his grave is and where the camp is. And there's a corporate paintball gathering going on. And this is like a bunch of goofball characters, like over the top, completely cliched caricatures of corporate people.
Yeah, just like goofball, like meatball versions of like the camp counselors, but they're the adult executives.
One crazy guy's running around with a machete, and their faces are painted up, and they're playing paintball.
Yeah.
Jason, this is where he smashes the guy's face into the tree, and it makes a bloody smiley face. He takes the machete, of course, his weapon of choice. And next we get to see him do a triple decapitation of two men and a woman all in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
This movie, and one of my complaints about this movie is we've been spoiled with Tom Savini effects through the beginning of the series, particularly the original and number four. The effects here, they pull away a lot. They don't show a lot in a series that is kind of known for its creative and masterful kills. With credit to the great Tom Savini in a lot of ways. They don't. There's not a lot of blood. The kills are creative, but not to the level of Savini creative, and they don't show the level of detail and gore that he usually shows. So as a gore fan, I was disappointed that the kills showed so little.
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot more tame. Yeah, they pull back on a lot of it. It's they're not as like blood gushing and gory as a lot of the other movies are. There's some of them were cool. I like the one where like the head goes into the aluminum and they kind of like show the aluminum of like the head coming through it. I thought that was creative. And there's some other cool ones too.
Yeah, there's some cool ones. I guess maybe it's a sickness of me, but I like when they show the blood and the flesh being torn up, and that's kind of
We'll
like
get that.
hallmark of a great Jason movie.
Right, like things being ripped off and blood going everywhere. But we'll get that to the next movie.
We sure will. Yeah. Tommy leads the police to the grave. He convinced them, like, let me just show you. Let me just show you. But a drunken groundskeeper has already filled in the grave because the dead body of the friend is in there. So he thinks, well, everything's the way it should be, just fills it back in. So they escort Tommy out of town. Like you said, just first blood, like just, we don't care what you do, just don't do it in our town. I never thought of that. That's a great reference. And Jason kills the drunk guy with a liquor bottle through the neck. Again, creative kill, cool kill, fitting. This guy's drunk. The bottle will be the end of you. It sure will.
Right.
It could have been so much cooler. It could have, you could have seen it go through the neck and seen the blood come out the open end of the bottle. And
yeah, you could have done a lot. You could have scooped his brains out with it, right? You could have
right.
you could have done infinite things. You could have went through the top of the head and scooped his lid back, and you could have done all sorts of stuff. But who knows? Maybe it was budget.
He finds another couple in the woods. They're fooling around, and he kills them with his standard machete. We cut to two of the counselors are in an RV having sex, and Jason rips the power out. And as you know, another hallmark of the Friday the 13th movie is if you're fooling around, you're going to get killed by Jason.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because that's how he died.
Right. Infidelity.
So, campers are fooling around, not paying attention to the kids. That's how Jason died. So
that's why he's there. He's there to make sure that no one's fooling around.
Right. He rips the power out, leaves the RV powerless in the dark. And they go outside to check the connection, and they see it's severed. And they decide we better get out of here, and they go to drive off. But Jason has now hidden himself inside the RV. And this is where he takes the girl's face inside the bathroom, and he smashes it into the wall, making a shape of her face through the thin wall of the camper.
Yeah.
Which was pretty cool. Okay, no blood, but the idea was pretty cool.
Yeah. The idea of pain was there.
He kills the driver of the RV, and the RV crashes. It flips over, and you think, oh my God, like there was budget, right? They made the RV crash and flip and land on its side, but Jason climbs out and is standing triumphantly on top. He's almost like a superhero at this point. He's, he's up there like nothing can hurt me.
That's kind of what happens eventually with all of these movies, right? They just kind of have these like powers where they just kind of appear and do whatever they want.
Yeah. The cops find the bodies from the couple and the couple in the RV, and they blame Tommy, thinking that he is doing the killings and making it look like Jason. Tommy's hiding out, but the sheriff's daughter, Megan, believes his story and picks him up. And the cops are chasing Megan and Tommy, and they eventually catch him, and they put Tommy back in jail. It's the weird dynamic, in 80s movies where like the sheriff's daughter immediately goes for whoever the sheriff thinks is a bad guy.
Yeah, yeah. She immediately has a crush on him for absolutely no reason other than it's someone the dad would not want her to have a crush on.
Right. This guy's a killer. Oh, I think he's cute. Come with me.
Yeah, I'll show you, Dad.
She has no reason to believe him, but she does. And
Yeah.
as the viewer, we buy right in because we believe him because we saw it.
Right, right. Like, yeah, go with him.
So they put Tommy back in jail. Jason now arrives at the camp and he cuts the phone lines. He pulls a girl out of a window and decapitates her. And one of the young campers finds a bloody machete and brings it to her counselor. The counselor is now starting to freak out. And they hide out in a cabin. But Jason breaks in, kills the counselor, and throws her out of the window. And he's hovering over the little girl. And it's like, is he actually going to go there? Like she's like pull the covers up, and he's like hovering over, and he's a mindless killing machine. Although I was curious to think, being a kid who was, who has all this anger from dying at camp, does he sympathize with the kids and only go after the counselor? So I was really curious to see what he did.
Yeah.
And they didn't really answer it because the cops were outside yelling, and he's distracted and he heads for the cops.
I think they leave it ambiguous like that for a reason. But I think it's interesting. This is like the only Jason movie where there's actual kids at this camp, right? Usually it's just like the teenagers there. Where now they have actual kids, and like you said, he gets confronted with the child like that, and then nothing really happens. He just kind of stares at her, and then like you said, gets distracted, and like we never get like an answer. But I think by him not doing anything, that was kind of like him saying, "Yeah, I don't go after little kids."
Yeah, maybe. It was curious to see how it was going to play out without an interruption, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
They probably left it a little ambiguous. I thought he might just turn and walk out and leave her under the covers, but we'll never know.
I think that's kind of cool though. Like he doesn't go after little kids. Like even though he is this mindless evil, it's kind of like he's like an evil towards something else. Not just like random towards anyone.
Yeah. Megan helps Tommy escape jail because once you're in, why not go in deeper and, trick the cop, get his keys, lock him in the jail, and let Tommy out? You might as well go all the way.
All the way. Yeah.
Daughter. Tommy says he must return Jason to the bottom of the lake, his original resting place, which we know very well, where he burst up into the boat at the end of the original. Jason's now stalking the cops at the camp, and he kills one by throwing a knife from his utility belt. And at this point, I went, okay, now he's like Batman. He has a utility belt with weapons on it. I'm like, that kind of bothered me.
Yeah, he's got a utility belt. He knows how to cut the power out. He knows, he's
and it didn't fit for me because he's not the kind of person who has a utility belt, right? And he's also he's a blunt instrument. Right? He's not a finesse. Yeah. He's just a mindless, driven, powerful killing machine. And the fact that he has knife throwing skills, it just didn't fit for me. I thought it was cheesy.
Too much coordination and too much ability and skill goes into that. Whereas, like you said, he's just mindless.
You can go around with an axe or a machete and hack people up, and it makes sense. You suddenly have a utility belt with what's he got? Ninja stars on there too.
No, I was just gonna say ninja stars. Yeah,
I'm like, okay, that's. But again,
it's dropping smoke bombs and disappearing.
If it was played for humor, it didn't seem to be played for humor, and that made it miss for me. But so he then kills another. He kills another one by crushing his head, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
The sheriff brings all the kids to one cabin, and he goes after Jason with a shotgun, and he shoots him in the chest, knocks him down, but he keeps getting back up. And this just kind of fits our, from his reanimation at the beginning to this, he just won't stay dead.
Right.
Jason goes off after Megan, and the sheriff runs and attacks him to save her. He just basically jumps on him, which is a foolish, you couldn't kill him with your shotgun. Now you're just going to jump on him. So he saves his daughter, which I understand, but then Jason kills him. Jason breaks into the cabin with all the kids and he grabs Megan. So maybe this is your answer. In a room full of people, he only grabs Megan.
Yeah. And it's funny, at one point, all the kids are hiding, and one of the kids looks at the other kid and he goes, "So what were you going to be when you grow up?"
Those two kids were the funniest part of the movie. Because they're like, we're screwed.
Yeah, we're screwed. And
They're hiding under the bed, but they're not like scared little kids. They're just like talking about the
Yeah.
twisted cruelty of it all.
Yeah, they're like the nihilistic children.
They're like the Randolph and Mortimer and the Muppets up in the balcony,
Muppets,
just
yeah.
making smart ass comments. Yeah, those two kids were funny.
Yeah.
So Tommy calls to Jason, saving Megan, and he leads Jason into the water where he's got a small rowboat with a small motor on it, and inside he's got a chain hooked to a large rock.
Yeah, somehow he got a 300-pound rock in there.
Yep. Yep, and it's a rickety ass rowboat. It looks like it's from the original movie, and nobody ever replaced it.
I couldn't pick that rock up if two other people helped me. That thing was a boulder.
Jason goes out, walks into the water, and walks under the boat. Like he doesn't swim, obviously. He just it's like, where is he? Now he's almost Jaws-like in his invisible ability to attack from the water. This is where Tommy does something strange. He pours gasoline in a circle around the boat and lights it on fire. So now the water is all flaming, and it actually looks really cool. He's sitting in the middle of this boat surrounded by this flaming water.
Yeah.
And Jason leaps out of the water, very reminiscent of his emergence at the end of the original. And he grabs Tommy, and they're struggling. And they're kind of wrestling and tangling with each other. And the weight is unbearable on the boat. The boat's starting to give way. Tommy manages to get the chain around Jason's neck. And just as he does it, Jason pulls himself up and the boat breaks, sending both of them crashing underwater. The boulder pulls Jason to the bottom, and all he has is the length. He's like a dog on a chain. He only has the length of his chain to maneuver. But he chokes out Tommy. He's got his hands around his throat, and he chokes him out until he floats to the surface. Megan swims out to rescue Tommy because this kid she just met is obviously the most important thing in her life.
Right.
And she's about to save him, and Jason grabs her foot. He's got just enough reach from the bottom that he can get her foot. And she turns on in a moment of, I guess, real ingenuity. She fires up the boat motor and turns the boat motor into his head. And something about this scene, like I love the concept, but the distance between Jason, his arm fully extended, her ankle, the length of her leg, and how deep that boat motor would be, the boat motor would be nowhere near his head.
Right, it wouldn't work.
It didn't make sense at all, but the concept was cool.
Yeah.
She turns the motor on and she turns it until it's biting into his head and it's chunking up flesh and it's like spitting and sputtering like a chainsaw stuck in wood. Yeah. I thought that was really cool. Chunks start spitting out and the motor finally gives way and he lets go. And it's like, okay, she finally killed him.
Yeah.
She drags Tommy out of the water and he does the typical, everybody thinks he's dead till he sputters out water and of course he's fine. And Jason appears dead. The crisis is over. And the next day they show the camera shot at the bottom of the lake and his body's just floating there. And all of a sudden, boom, the eyes open. We know we're not done with Jason.
Right. And then that's the end of the movie.
That's the end of the movie. So yeah, I like how you said it's a fun movie. It's not meant to be taken serious. Obviously none of the Friday the 13th are really meant to be taken seriously.
Right. But some are dark, some have a darker feel than others or a more serious tone than others. I think this one's a little bit more silly.
Yeah, it is. And if it went full on horror comedy, I would be there. I would totally be in for that. But it was like they were unsure about, well, how comedic do we want to make it? It's Jason. Right. We have to be intimidating and scary. Well, let's throw a funny part in here. The tone was very uneven, I thought.
Yeah, he doesn't really come off as intimidating. He's kind of just there for the kills. And then in between, and there's just kind of like this like snarky like comedy between everyone. And it kind of like it never takes one direction serious one way or another, whether it's going to be like a really dark cinematic movie with some like lighthearted elements to it, or if it's just going to be full on comedy with some cool kills. It never takes either direction, like you said.
Yeah. But again, I think the opening sequence is fantastic. I think
Yeah,
that is a classic in the Friday the 13th series, one of the best sequences in the
it's one
whole
of the better
series.
ones. Yeah.
And it's got some good parts to it. I just overall I think it's a mediocre movie, but it definitely hits the won't stay dead right on the head.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our second film in this category, Won't Stay Dead, is Planet Terror from 2007, directed by Robert Rodriguez. And this was originally part of the Grindhouse double feature with Death Proof with Quentin Tarantino. And the movie starts just like just like Death Proof does. It's got the old scratchy 70s um, jumpy screen, like marks
Yeah,
in the
the film grading. One thing I watched the special features for it, and Rodriguez was said something interesting that you don't really notice unless you kind of like know it. But he said that they intentionally made the film grading get worse and worse as something bad was going to happen until it actually happened. And then when the threat was clear, they'd make the film better again. And then as something was getting worse and worse and worse, they'd continue to make the film grading like worse. And so
well,
you kind of had you had this subconscious idea that like something was getting worse, so the film would just continuously get worse as you watched it, and then it would clear up again.
and the Grindhouse concept was to take, the movies of the 70s that were that played at the local theaters that were not cinematic masterpieces, but featured car chases and you know scantily clad women and excessive violence, and they were just you know
Splatter. Yeah.
just dumb fun movies that people seemed to enjoy back then. And in that vein, I thought they did a good job of capturing that essence.
Yeah. I
Um,
think they did a great job.
the movie starts with an awesome fake trailer for a movie called Machete, and the trailer is so cool that the movie actually got made.
Yeah, when you watch the trailer, you're just like, well, why don't they just make this a movie too?
Right. And they did, which
Yeah,
is really
they
cool.
did. Yeah.
Any opportunity for Danny Trejo to get not one but two feature films
Yeah.
out of that role is awesome.
It's awesome. Yeah, and then you get to play see Cheech as the priest with the dual wielding shotguns.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are good. Those are fun movies.
Yeah.
They're very much in this vein of just dumb fun.
Hmm.
So our movie starts with go-go dancer Cherry Darling. She quits her job, and when she's walking off down the road, she gets run off the road by a military convoy and gets a piece of metal stuck in her leg. The military convoy arrives at the base, and there's a conflict. The leader of the group that drove there is Bruce Willis, playing an evil role.
Who
And
I wish was in this movie more. He's not in it enough.
and actually, I read that it was something they also did in the 70s in these grindhouse movies, is they would hire a big name actor for a few days, get him in the marquee, but just get him in a few scenes.
Just enough where they could pay him, right?
Right, right. It was like, we got, we'll come shoot for 3 days and then you're out.
Yeah.
But
And
we can
you'll get to be on the
advertise your
poster.
name in the
Yeah.
movie, and that was something they did back then, and they kind of replicated that with Bruce Willis. But the base leader is a guy named Abby, who sadistically carries around a jar of men's testicles that he cuts off whenever somebody disappoints him. So there's this big conflict. Bruce Willis's character wants more of this agent that they've been trying to create, and there's a big gunfight. And Abby shoots one of the canisters of this agent, and a green mist rolls out, melting flesh on everyone it touches and turning them into infected undead.
Yeah, it's like you have to wear like they're all wearing masks. So like if you like take the mask off, you can see their skin start to bubble. Like they only have a couple minutes.
Meanwhile, Cherry, with her cut leg, she makes it to a barbecue joint, and runs into her ex, a guy named Ray, who becomes very prominent in the story. And this barbecue joint kind of becomes like the center of the film.
Yeah.
We cut to a Dr. Block, a very well used Josh Brolin. He suspects his wife of cheating, and they're getting ready to go off to work together. She's an anesthesiologist, and they're working on a patient from the military site, and his tongue is a fungal rotting blob. Like otherwise he looks fine. They're like, man, what's wrong with this guy? And then he sticks out his tongue, and it's just this mutated, leaking,
Bubbly.
Festering. It's disgusting.
This movie's gross with the bubbles.
Yeah.
It's always oozing and pussing and popping.
Yeah, there's a woman named Tammy. We don't know really her role. She's driving down the street in a car, and it breaks down, and she is attacked and eaten in the road by members of the military base who have wandered off as now these savage creatures.
It's Fergie, right?
It is Fergie, yeah. Cherry and Ray leave the barbecue joint together, and they swerve around the zombies eating Tammy and run over some, and they end up rolling his tow truck. The infected pull Cherry out and drag her away. And Ray gets out, gets his gun, and he runs to save her, but they've already eaten one of her legs. And so he picks her up, and he takes her to the doc. He brings her to the hospital, and Josh Brolin's, Dr. Block character starts to take care of her. And the cops grab Ray, and they harass him. Apparently they have a history with Ray, and it's almost like we just talked about, like, Ray, you need to be out of town. It's like the same idea as like,
get out of here. What are you doing? Like in the middle of all this conflict, and the cops are just like, get out. But so now we know they're establishing that like Ray has he's a somebody, right? Because we don't really know anything about him at this point.
At this point, you would assume he's just a troublemaker,
right?
But we learn he's much more. Tammy's body is brought into the hospital, and her brain is completely missing, which I thought was kind of a funny. This movie tries to stick the humor in as well, and I don't know if that was like a, Fergie as a brainless character, but her head is a cracked like egg hollow shell, and it's just scooped empty.
Yeah.
And we find out that Doc's wife Dakota, the anesthesiologist, that's who she was having an affair with, was Tammy, Fergie's character. Doc is suspected all along, and he confronts her, and she confesses, and Doc locks her in the storage closet. He was very menacing and threatening. Like at first we thought he was a good guy. He doesn't seem so good.
Yeah, in the beginning he seems like this loving father. I'm going off to work, and just this regular doctor, and he kind of just develops this sinister quality about him really quick.
Yeah.
And as going back to what I said in the beginning, like you see the grading of the film start to get worse and worse throughout these parts of the film.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I did notice the degrading of the film. I thought it was random. I'd never put the pattern together.
Yeah. So it's fun if you go back and watch it.
Yeah, he's menacing her using her own injections, which we saw her use on a patient, where it's like, one to calm you, one to
numbing agents, and he's like
and
stabbing her in the hand repeatedly. You'll never see me again. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the cops gets his finger bitten off, and of course it's Tom Savini.
Who probably volunteered that part. Let it be me.
Of course. He's like, I'll cut my own finger off. I know how to do it.
It does it right there.
It sparks a battle between the cops and the infected. And there's a big shootout. The hospital's being overrun, and one of the sick patients, a man, he pops his infected face like a a Pimple Popper episode. He pops his whole infected face and smears it on Dr. Block.
Yeah.
His wife Dakota jumps out of the window, and it's weird in this film of gooey, sick, and disgusting messes. The next scene is one of the most difficult to watch because she's got her hand all the way stuck through a car door, and she's trying to use her leg to pull the door open. It's stuck, and she's wearing heels, and her heel breaks, and she falls, and her hand is stuck in there, and just snaps
Goosenecks.
at awful
Yeah.
angles.
Yeah. It's just a complete gooseneck. It's like, oh,
And they make it loud and cracky and she screams and it's like,
it just looks rubbery when she's trying to use it. Yeah. But she does something really cool. She uses her wristwatch to grab the shifter.
yeah. Yeah. So now the hospital's just chaos. There's explosions, there's people screaming and running in every one direction. But Ray goes in to get Cherry.
Mhm.
And we see Ray is a talented ass kicker.
Yeah.
His way through, he's just blasting people, knocking them down.
The classic hallway shoot 'em up scene where he's kind of like bouncing off the walls and shooting and stabbing everything.
Yeah. He gets to Cherry and her leg, she has nothing left. She's just a stump. And she's like, well, what am I going to do like this? And he he breaks a table leg off and sticks it onto her stump. And she comes hobbling out of the hospital on one
He's
leg
like, now you got a leg.
and one table leg.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even question it. She's just like, okay, let's go.
Let's go.
Everyone converges now at the barbecue joint. JT is it's Jeff Fahey, who's actually great in this movie. He's already killed.
He was the lawnmower man, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was also the evil guy in the Machete trailer,
Mm-hmm.
but with a completely different look.
Yeah.
But he's the barbecue joint guy, and he's already killed some of the undead that were stalking his place. While they're there, everybody's kind of holed up. Cherry and Ray reconnect, profess their love for each other. We saw that coming.
The most inappropriate time when there's zombies getting ready to come around the house and everyone's preparing with guns and they just sit down and they are having a little chit chat.
People should learn in these films that not to trust your emotions when you're thrust into a highly volatile situation.
Which is funny because moments before when we saw them at the hospital, he was completely like, this isn't a time to be emotional about your leg. Let's do what we have to do and keep it moving. And they're like very militaristic about it. And now they get back to JT's and they're just like, hey, let's be emotional. It's like, what happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you forget
Dakota,
the war zone? Yeah.
right. Dakota picks up her son Tony and they go to her dad's, and her dad is the great Michael Parks, who plays his ongoing character of Earl the sheriff, and in this case, he's Dakota's father. Which I think I love when he appears, and he's in many Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino movies. I just think he's awesome.
I like seeing recurring actors with specific directors. It's fun.
Yeah. So when Dakota goes to the door to talk to her dad, she left Tony with a gun. He's just a little kid. She shows him how to use it and tells him not to shoot himself in the face. But of course, Tony shoots himself in the face. And
Okay.
the only little kid in the entire movie is gone in a weird and anticlimactic way.
Yeah, and it catches you off guard because she's walking away and you hear the gun go pop and you're like, oh no.
Yeah. I thought
Yeah,
it was
very-
a strange scene, honestly.
It was a strange scene, but yeah, it kind of gave you like the Mist vibes with like the kid getting shot, even though it's terrible.
So with her son gone, Dakota and her dad Earl, they go to the barbecue joint as well. So now all of our characters have centered at the barbecue joint, and the place is being swarmed. So Cherry goes to get the tow truck while Ray covers her. And this is where the cops see like a tattoo on his arm, and Ray is just picking people off from a distance, and they're like, oh, Ray's ex-military, and he's a highly trained killer. And the cop's like, oh, I didn't know you were this. I wouldn't have, given you such a hard time all your life.
Right. So now we know he's a someone.
Yeah, he's a someone, which we could figure out a while ago. So they all end up leaving in different vehicles, and it's one of those. It's almost like a George Miller Road Warrior kind of thing. Everybody's just chugging off in their different vehicles.
Yeah.
Ray's actually driving a microbike.
Which I think is hilarious that he's leading the convoy in this little microbike.
Yeah, it's like it's like the size of two roller skates, and
But
he's
he's also
going
like,
down
listen,
the road.
I'm the most deadly. I don't need what you guys need. Just give me that.
Yeah. Of course, our group encounters the military on a bridge, and there's like a standoff there, and it's the Bruce Willis characters back.
Yep.
And the military takes them and locks them all up with the other prisoners, including Abby. And we find out Abby is the head scientist who made this gas. And it's biological warfare type of thing. And the disconnect for me here is that Abby is the lead scientist, is also the man who goes around carrying people's testicles in a jar. That doesn't seem like the same person.
It does. It throws you off in the beginning. You think he's one of like the cartel type guys, right?
Yeah.
Like one of the major bad guys. But now his character is just like this, like the scientist that's going to try and help, and like, guys, I've been trying to blah blah blah, and it's just like, well, wait, which character was he?
Yeah. So he made the gas, and he's like, well, sorry, like it wasn't supposed to happen like this. But he actually shot the canister and caused all this. So again, it's like it's hard to portray you as a hero now. And I almost think that some of that was on purpose. Like, grindhouse films don't always make sense.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't really know. I was scratching my head like, wait, the head scientist is also the guy who snips off people's testicles and carries them around.
Yeah, was it supposed to be Scooby-Doo style writing where it just kind of just flips on you real quick and you just kind of go with it? Yeah.
Not typically what you would think of in, how a scientist would behave, but the movie's crazy. So
I'm going to say they did it on purpose because so many great professionals were involved with making this movie. That couldn't have been an oversight, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you would think so. The military takes away Cherry and Dakota, and the guy who grabs them is Quentin Tarantino, and he is so good at playing a sleazeball.
Yeah.
So
it's one of his best things he does when he acts.
So he's talking all this sleazy talk, and meanwhile Ray and Abby break out together. So he's taunting the girls as an aggressive pervert. He gets exposed to the chemical, and he's coming on to the girls, and we see him unzip his pants, and it's pretty well done from a cinematography perspective. We got the camera underneath him from behind, and we see that his dick is completely rotting and falling apart in clumps.
Yeah,
it's just pieces of it just are falling off and splatting on the pavement.
It's falling off like an ice cream cone on a hot day, just dripping off in clumps.
But like all the other people who've been infected, like it doesn't stop him. It like almost adds to his menace because he's continuing forward regardless that the thing he intended to use is a melted ooze now.
Yeah, he's just become a total monster, so he's continuing forward as that monster.
In the chaos, Cherry's leg had been snapped in half, and she kills him with the broken stick part of her stump straight through his eye.
So there's our eye scene.
There's our eye scene. We knew we'd have one this week. But there's almost I don't want to call it a touching scene because it's kind of funny. But her and Dakota are sitting there talking when they're captured, and she's like, all my skills are useless. And she's like, I can arch my back. And she's doing stuff that she did as a go-go dancer, right? And she's doing all these maneuvers and these side bends and these kicks. And then she does a side kick very similar to stab him with the stump. And through the rest of the movie, she uses all of her skills as a weapon. So it's like she does have useful skills. It's like this, like, wow, I am somebody kind of moment in the most ridiculous way.
Yeah, and they're numbered, like useless talent number 37.
Yes.
Or useless talent number 138. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of humorous. They all meet back up, and Ray installs an assault rifle that also has a grenade launcher as part of it onto Cherry's leg.
And we know this from the poster because when you look at the poster of the movie or the cover of the DVD, that's what it is.
Right. And you look at it, and it's as ridiculous as you would imagine. Because no concept is ever shown of how a trigger is pulled.
I thought it was as awesome as you could imagine.
It's awesome.
It's
but
awesome.
she's using her back bends and her
Yeah.
arches, and she is
Yeah.
shooting her way out for all of them.
Yeah.
And she's just turning and spinning and kicking and doing all her dance moves and just killing everybody all over the way. I still don't know how
Yeah.
the trigger was pulled, like how she could decide between regular gun and grenade launcher,
Let's not let logic get in the way of a good time.
but it was completely grindhouse over the top ridiculousness, and
Right.
uh she's about to get shot from behind, and Ray gets shot protecting her. Dakota gets on a helicopter and is about to escape, but now Josh Brolin, her husband, is there, completely mutated and very
Just
menacing,
steps out.
and he's about to kill her. But the great Earl, Michael Parks, arrives and kills him and saves her. So the group gets on another helicopter, and they take off with the blades turned down. They're like, if you picture a helicopter, it's like
Yeah.
leaning forward like it's
It's like a
bowing.
45-degree angle.
Yeah,
So
and it's
it's
just
chopping in.
cutting a path through the zombies, through the infected as they go. And that was kind of cool. Cherry and Ray are left behind, and she's kind of tending to him, and he's dying. And she thinks she's doomed as they're enclosing her, but the chopper flies over, and they drop a rope and they pick her up, and they fly off together. And the group starts a new community at a Caribbean island, and down the road, Cherry has Ray's child, and they have this wonderful new community of
Which
supportive
which
people.
which that part right there brings you back to the unnecessary lovemaking scene that they have. It's like, well, okay, that had its purpose because now that explains why they have a child.
And humanity can go on.
Right. And that's so it kind of brings it full circle.
Yeah. And again, there's nothing serious about this movie, but
Yeah.
unlike the first film that like dipped back and forth between 10, I thought this one walked a good balance because while never really scary, it was gory and ridiculous the entire time.
Yeah.
Certainly not a perfect film. It's not for everyone,
It's
but
more
I thought
fun
it
for
was a lot
anything.
of fun. Yeah.
Well, Rodriguez says, and like I said, I was watching this, the, just the DVD commentary, and he was talking about how the scariest part of the movie to him was the child dying. He was like, that's really like the most horrifying thing you could think of is your child dying, right? And he's like, the rest of the movie is just kind of fun. And so I actually agree with that. I think the movie, for the most part, is just lots of fun, splatter, and gore.
I agree with it also, and that's why that scene feels out of place to me.
Yeah.
Because in the middle of all this ridiculousness, something seriously tragic
Tragic.
is just
Yeah.
sitting there, and it's just the tone doesn't mesh. The rest,
It
like
just, yeah, the
from
tone.
minute
Yeah.
one, it's ridiculous, and that's obviously very serious. And
Yeah, it's very tragic, and you're left hanging on with that. Like, wait, what happened to the ridiculous stuff that we were just having fun with? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like if he was going to come back as a
The
giant,
savior.
a mutated giant that now is stomping people, that made more sense with the tone of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
But the poor kid just dying was tragic.
Yeah.
But a pretty fun flick. A lot of great special effects. Tons of outstanding actors and actresses throughout the movie.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and they did it on a budget, and they did it perfect. To do homage to that grindhouse era splatter style, I think they did a great job.
Yeah, we'll probably never see another one quite like that because despite having Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez combining their efforts in this grindhouse, the movie was not successful financially either as a packaged as a whole, or each film was then sent to DVD and Blu-ray individually as their own films. Um, and Death Proof might be the weakest of all the Tarantino movies. This I thought was tons of fun. It was very much in the vein of From Dusk Till Dawn, another Robert Rodriguez movie that's
Hmm.
ridiculous but fun.
Yeah, I think it has rewatchability. It's like the fourth or fifth time I've seen this movie. It's one of those movies I can just put on and have fun watching it. Almost every scene is it's good. It's good pacing. It doesn't lag at any point. It's just a fun special effects movie with lots of snarky dialogue. It's funny, and it just kind of I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's like a cross between George Romero and Sin City.
Yeah, that's a great mashup comparison.
But yeah, tons of fun. Again, not a perfect film by any means, but and if you're looking for scares, this isn't. I wouldn't consider this film scary at all.
No,
It's ridiculous and over the top. But if you're looking for blood and guts and some craziness, it's going to be right
yeah,
up your alley.
this is out of control. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our show for this week. A great topic. Won't stay dead. Uh, we actually have a good topic in line for next week. Next week will be episode 80, and the topic's going to be body horror, which is something I'm a huge fan of.
Me
It
too.
gets so twisted and demented, and we got a good mix for next week. So that'll be a lot of fun. But
I can't wait.
yeah. So that's our episode for this week. We appreciate you listening, watching, however you find us. We are the Weekly Horoscope. I'm Jerry, that's Matt, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone.
Your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.